Hey, Twisted people, it's your Twisted
Hey.
girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, aka Twisted Woman CKR, and I am joined here by my partner here today and also in life, Michael Damian.
Yeah.
For
Thank
those
you for
who
having me.
yeah, for those who, of course, for those who may be familiar with some earlier live streams from some months ago, we did The Stand together. We did a deep dive into
Yeah.
CBS's version of The Stand, and that was both fun, but also a little bit excruciating because of what they did with The Stand in that one. And we are doing this for Midnight Mass. This is kind of like more so all encompassing as opposed to episode by episode because it came out all in one. So we watched it together, and I thought it would be good to have Michael on because he has experience in Catholicism and being Catholic churches and stuff, and some of that in his
Yeah.
upbringing. For myself, I mean, I was raised and born Baptist, so it's a little bit different. Still follows under some of the doctrines and stuff, but it is something to discuss. So thank you all of you who are joining us in the live chat and those of you who are joining us in the replay. It's always a pleasure talking these stories with you. Tad from Iowa, thank you so much for always
Hey.
joining. Tad, greetings, cheers from Iowa, as Tad is saying. And Blake, thanks for joining us. Hey y'all, thanks for joining. Okay, so we got a couple of things we want to cover when it comes to this, because this is a spoiler discussion. So if you have not watched this, you're going to be spoiled. But I'm guessing if you're watching this, you want to be spoiled because you want to talk about this story. And I felt like when I watch certain things, I like to do spoiler discussions, mainly because with this channel, I like to do a little bit of a deeper dive into things. That some of you who join me for American Horror Story and Evil and others, we like diving deep into the stories. And this one in particular is something to dive into because of just all of the layers of things that we saw with it. And so, what we want to go through, we kind of have a little bit of outline. So, we want to talk about the grade for the series, like, what grade would we give this series overall, this limited series? Michael's going to give a grade and like some quick thoughts. I'll give my grade and quick thoughts. And then, just a few overall thoughts that I had, because as you all know, I'm a full-time film and TV critic. So I wrote a little bit of a longer piece about that. I want to kind of take some excerpts from that, some of the highlights I made, and then talk about best moments. What do we think this series was trying to say? Best characters, worst characters, and I want you all to think about this too. Like what what characters you like, what characters you didn't like, the worst characters that you thought of this series, and the question of religion in general. And then the question of religion in horror, because we know this is a great sub genre of horror when it comes to exploring it. So we're going to talk about that. And then, overall, if you're familiar with Mike Flanagan's work, what do you think are some of his best ones? Do you think this was his best one thus far? Or do you think there are others and this one was kind of there? And then, so what we want to do, and Tad is asking in the live chat, are we going step by step? Well, to go step by step, we'd be here for some hours, right? Because it was 7 hours worth of, of things. So it's kind of it's broad strokes in the sense of kind of taking some of the major things that happened and some of the plot lines that occurred and what we thought of those plot lines, because there were a number of plot lines and characters, right? And some of the things that they went through. So we want to talk about that as well, of with it. And so this is Midnight Mass for those who are watching, and if you haven't already, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't as well. And so first and foremost, I want to know what you all thought of it. Even if you're not familiar with Mike Flanagan's work, or if you are, what grade would you give Midnight Mass? If you had to give it a grade, what grade would it be and why? And let's go to you, Michael, of course, and ask you, what grade would you give Midnight? What grade did you give Midnight Mass?
I gave Midnight Mass an A+.
Okay. So
I
pretty
know.
much you thought this was like a perfect series.
Yeah, I really did. And even though there are criticisms about like scenes dragging on a little bit too long, you got to remember if you grew up in the church, there were moments in church that felt way too long and drawn out. So it actually felt like an evil sermon. And I'm happy to be here. I was about to say MOON, that spells midnight mass, but
Little Stephen
little
King reference.
yeah, little homages. I thought Mr. Flanagan did a great job as a fellow guy named Mike. I'm happy that he has the name Mike as well. Big shoes to fill, but he did an amazing job, and I think an A+ all around.
Okay, so you would give it an A+. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see what some people in the chat would give it. Blake is saying A- because it did drag in some places, but the stellar cast more than made up for it. Definitely think this is the best out of the 3 Netflix horror shows. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you might be, I think there's a few people who might be in agreement with you that
It was his
Mike
best.
Flanagan's best. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. I got a controversial
so
take,
far.
y'all. I don't
far,
actually
best
think
so far.
So far, I actually don't think Midnight Mass is his best. And I do love Midnight Mass. I do. But I don't think it's his best one in terms of limited series for sure. But I'll talk about that in a second. Tad is giving it a B+. Okay. And Will, thanks for joining us in live chat. Will is saying B+ as well. So, overall, my grade for the show is, I'm pretty much with you all. I'm giving it about a B+, B+, B- a little bit, for a number of reasons. I thought that it did drag on at times. The thing about Mike Flanagan is that he's really good at doing dialogue, or more so, he's really good at character speeches, right? Like his characters are just so poetic and things like that, and they all seem to have some deep stuff to say, way more. And sometimes you have to kind of step out of reality for a second and know not everyone talks like that, right? But his characters, they always seem, even if it's the most like base character, they always seem to be able to have an epiphany or something that just gives them these speeches that are just like, whoa, that just happened. Like They talk so deep. And so to me, that's suspension of disbelief. I can be okay that everyone gives a soliloquy or a monologue like every other thing. And he has done that in the past in other instances. I felt like with Midnight Mass, it was excessive almost. Although I loved everything they said, don't get it wrong. I just felt as though maybe he should have made it 10 episodes. So maybe it didn't feel like every other scene had long monologues coming from the characters. And sometimes in places that it seemed contrived. There were a few places that seemed contrived. And for example, when our sheriff, one of my favorite characters, Sheriff Hassan, was talking to the doctor, and the doctor was going to him, telling him what was going on in the town. And she said, can you investigate? And it was a beautiful thing he talked about in being, discriminated against because of after 9/11 and things like that. But it was like, she just told you people might be dying. Do we have time for a 10-minute speech? I mean, it was beautiful, but I was like, do we have time for that? I don't know if we have time for that. And
he was right though.
He was.
He was right to assume that. I mean, a crazy religious Catholic lady, all isolated on her own little island, like leading the charge. And then one like mainland cop who got transferred over, who's been dealing with Islamophobia the whole time that he's been dishing out.
He was right to say, you really want me to be the person. But then again, you are the only law authority in town. But I totally got it, and I loved it. But I was like, maybe we could have put this in a different scene. Maybe he could have been talking to someone casually and that came up. To have it in that moment just seemed. And then we had the scenes between Aaron Green and Riley Flynn, right? These two characters were the characters who definitely had every scene they had was just so deep. And I can get that. If you've ever had a friend where y'all can't do casual talk, you always have to, y'all talk deep stuff all the time. Who needs chit chat? Let's talk about the meaning of death and life. Okay, sure. But like every scene with them,
everyone,
a long discussion. And
They
it
all
was
looked
like,
at each other like this.
yeah. And it was like, so what do you think about life? What do you think happens when we die? Yes, we get it, Michael. So it's like,
But I'm doing it the Mike Flynn duration.
The Mike Flanagan way, yeah.
Mike Flanagan. I don't know who Mike Flynn is. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And so, it was kind of like, man, I loved what they were saying, but it was like, I mean, when I finish watching it, I'm like, this is going to be a drama student's wet dream, this show, taking excerpts from everything each of these characters saying and probably auditioning with it. This is perfect for people who are looking at it. But for those of us who were sitting there were times when I was like, okay, here's another one already. Like we just had one. Like we just had a long monologue just now. And Will is saying, finally, a show that you're discussing that I've actually seen. Oh, yeah, I know. And I'm so glad that you're joining, Will. I know I do shows on here for those who don't know. And I've been leaning a little bit more towards like TV talk on here and deeper discussion type things. So, but it's always great when y'all all can join me for that. Will is saying, like Nolan Batman films, the characters talk like wise sages or something, right? Like every character is just, even the kids. Even the kids talk deep.
Yeah.
Like there's never anyone that's just like, I don't know. Like no one's ever like that in Mike Flanagan stuff.
Nobody ever goes, okay.
And the thing is, I could believe that in Haunting of Hill House, right? Because it was the whole family and the way they grew up with parents who made them talk like that, who kind of raised them that way. So I can understand why they all had deep conversation and stuff, because they kind of were raised in that environment to think deeper and stuff, and a little bit in Blind Manor, sure. But I don't know. In this one, I was like, this is a small, like, sea town, like working class people, which I am one of. And, there are some who are going to be, maybe sages, but others are just straight to the point. So it was a little weird that everyone had a monologue in their back pocket. The Clapper Loader, thanks for joining us. Clapper is saying, you're right about the long monologues. Yes. Blake is saying Sheriff Daddy Hansen. Okay, Blake. It flowed well with Bev Keene's soapbox moment, but it was odd by itself. Exactly. The Clapper is saying, I was not impressed with this. Could have been tighter script wise. And that's what I felt as well. And I'm curious what you all are thinking. And, it's great having this discussion with y'all. I just felt like some of the stuff could be tighter. I love the dialogue, but I was just like, he needed a really good editor.
Do you think the reason is because every other Mike Flanagan work has been not his, and Mike wrote and directed the show we're talking about, Midnight Mass? Yeah. And do you think maybe, like, as a writer, like, there's a Kill Your Darlings, like, he himself didn't have the extra set of eyes to trim down because it was his work? This was his passion project too, and I think that's why he might have gotten a little carried away with the long monologues.
Oh, I agree with you. If, just to talk a little bit about the history of this project, this was something he had been trying to get done for years around Hush, the time of Hush. What he would do, he said in an interview, is that he would put like the book make a mock-up of Midnight Mass on a book cover and put it in the shelves of the stories he was telling, like Haunting a Hill House. He would put it on the shelves just to he would say he did it just to kind of remind himself that he was going to eventually get to do this project. This was a project he had been wanting to do for some time, for a couple of years now.
It's good.
And it's good. Glad. It's something that because he used to be a Catholic boy, so it's something very personal to him. And, so I think you're right about that. Something so close to you, if you've been working on it for so long and you've been like trying to get it put up, it may be harder to, have an editor come and be like, well, we can kind of probably take out this whole scene right here. Mm-hmm. You're not going to probably agree with that. You're like, listen, what? And, this is the thing. It's not like he hasn't earned it, right? Like he has put out quality, in my opinion, quality projects. And so I think he understands that people are receptive to his characters speaking the way they do and things like that, that he'd be open that he was probably like, okay, this is my chance to kind of really throw it at them. And had this been his first thing of his I had ever seen, I would have liked it, but I probably would have been more like, yo, this guy's long-winded. But because I know what he's capable of doing in the other stuff, I was like, okay, this was his passion project. Yeah. So maybe we can give him a little space to overindulge. But I did think that the script suffered because of that.
Yeah.
Tad is saying, I'm jumping way ahead, but as a Catholic, not a good one. It was so appalling that he infused the communion with creepy angel vampire blood.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about that, Tad, because it's the play on religion and infusing of religion that I think is really interesting of what he took on. Fred says, thanks for joining us, Fred. Fred said, just joined. This show was a slow burn and was hard to get through, but the final 2 episodes were amazing. Very satisfied with the ending. Yeah, I think it definitely landed the ending for sure. I mean, I liked it. I liked where it was leading to. I liked what happened to the people who, I thought everyone's story was fitting. I thought some characters throughout the series got the short end of the stick, and we'll talk about that. But certain characters who I really wanted a certain ending for them, I got it. So I wasn't mad. More so Bev. I cannot stand Bev, and I was like, she has got to get it bad. You know what I mean? Our evil Bev.
Also, as somebody who's dabbled a little bit in Catholicism, I thought it was very progressive that Bev had a strong leadership within the church.
Yeah, you pointed that out because you were like, it's very interesting that they have a woman, especially in Catholic, because you've been in those churches that with Catholicism, having someone who is a woman being kind of the default leader.
Yeah, when normally there'd be other men, and then maybe she would take care of it. I got it when she took care of the rec center. Like, that is something that that I've seen Catholic women do, like maybe a parent or a woman who goes to the church and lives there unofficially. Yeah, she'd be in charge of the rec, and that would be her, and she would be in charge of the funds for that. But then she was doing other things that is like near like deacon level and like priest level that I thought was really, really fascinating for an island that has old-fashioned patriarchal values, and Bev is just allowed to put her personality before the patriarchy and actually dominate.
Even though she was evil. I think she was evil.
Well, there are also the people who claim that they're the most religious are often, not all, but often those have the most skeletons in their closet. That I think we saw at this show.
Okay. The clapper is saying, that's plausible. Also, no one stopped him. Better to have this be a short story and adapt the story to a screenplay. Yeah. Will is saying, do y'all think Bev was better villain than Carrie White's mom?
Ooh. Dude, Will's bringing the questions, dude. She could be. She's cut from the same cloth. Like, she's definitely a cousin
of the religious zealot, right?
Yeah, like we didn't get to hear. They're all gonna laugh at you. Like, we didn't hear that. They're all gonna laugh at you. Like, you're not gonna see that. But she did die a Mrs. White similar way. So that was she got it in the end, like Mrs. White. So that, wow, that is a very good question. Was she a better one? She was up there.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, that Carrie White's mom is from Carrie, a Stephen King reference there. In terms of the religious zealot, and I think this is, we're gonna, let's talk about it. Like, this is where, when, and as press, when I was getting the screeners for Midnight Mass, when I was writing my review, there was a letter that Mike Flanagan sent out to all the press, kind of just talking about what he wanted to touch on in terms of what he was trying to touch on with this story. And, one of the things that he said that he wanted to touch on was the real monsters, that, yes, there are monsters. In this one, it was a really creepy vampire, as in terms of like the like supernatural, but then there were actual real like monstrous types of people with their bias and the racism and bigotry and misinformation and things. And this is what he was talking about in the letter that he sent out. And I definitely saw that in Bev. I mean, with the thing with Bev was that, yeah, I didn't like the vampire dude, you know, the vampire, that he creeped me out. But in terms of a villain who I was like, I want to see, I would rather see this character's demise than even the vampire dude. Bev was up there. And I think it deals with something that's very tangible to us, right? Even if you're not a religious person or whatnot, I think we've all dealt with someone who's just so judgmental and then somehow gets their way at times, right? She killed the dog, y'all.
And then tried to cover it up.
And at that moment, I knew I hated this character. But even before then, I wasn't liking her. And it's just characters like that. It was something kind of therapeutic when she met her end, because too often in our own reality, characters like that don't get that kind of karma, do they? And so there was a certain therapeutic kind of thing with her finally getting her karma. With Carrie's mom, I don't know. With Carrie's mom, I felt like she was off her rocker, right? Like, I mean,
I think she also had less time to develop in the movie too.
Well, yeah, less time. But, you know, in terms of where her vile actions were coming from, I don't think she was completely in her controlled state of mind, right? I think Bev was completely calculating and control of her mind. So to me, I think Bev was more of the villain than Carrie's mom was. Because Carrie's mom was, I mean,
wasn't she originally scorned by like a lover? And
it was a thing where she became really religious after she got pregnant with Carrie. It was a whole thing, and she just went kind of off her rocker, you know. But it was very clear that she was kind of not all there. I don't think you can say that with Bev. Bev was completely aware, and that's why to me she was the worst kind of character. I mean, worst kind of villain.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bev is the reason why there's kind of like a stigma on some religions today, because there are people who, you know, the book and the text that you get the religion from may mean well, but it's ultimately what the people currently living here and now do, and like taint it for the rest of us. And yeah, Bev was the perfect personification of that.
Agreed. So yeah, I would say Bev out of the two was definitely the worst one for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tad is saying my hand would be sore if I slapped Bev every time I wanted. Yeah, Bev was same. Because there were times, I mean, when we were watching, I was just like, I can't stand this woman. She better get her just desserts. If she does not, I'm going to be so mad at this show. I don't even care if it's realistic that she does it.
Yeah. I have a pantry full of rat poison, but it wasn't me.
Right?
Like,
that
what?
Rat poison. Oh my gosh. The clapper is saying Bev was worse because she judged and looked down her nose at everyone who disagrees with her. Exactly. Fred is saying, how would you both rank Mike Flanagan's show? Oh, we're getting to that. We're going to say that.
Okay, actually, buckle up.
That's part of the outline. We're going to talk about this, and Michael and I actually have very different opinions. And I
buckle up, Freddie P.
In terms of what some other people, and I think I actually have a different opinion than some of y'all in the chat. But think about it, y'all. We want your ranking. Let us know in the live chat or else in the replay. What is your ranking of Mike Flanagan's work? Top three. We can do top three because Hush and stuff is a little bit different. But let's do top three. What's your top three? And is Midnight Mass up in there because we're going to talk about it. The clapper said Carrie's mom was taking out her self-hatred out on one person. Carrie, true. Blake is saying former preacher's kid here. We getting the experts, y'all.
Yeah.
Bev's Venn diagram of small town busybody and church politics was a perfect circle. There's no escaping that personality type in a small town congregation.
Yes.
And Blake, you would know that, right, Michael, from Jacksonville and Florida and living in Tennessee?
Yeah, and little background, like Jacksonville's a pretty fair city. It's mainly Baptist megachurches, and then there's pockets of people who don't really go to church, and like that was pretty much my friends, because I also grew up in an area where people would randomly go to your door and tell you you're going to burn in hell because you haven't seen their version of God. But, it was a big area, but I lived in like a small little town in Tennessee for 10 years. During my teenage years, that made me really appreciate this. And it was a small like Catholic community where like Christianity was like the dominant force, and like mosque and temples were confined to strip malls, and it was very Catholic, Methodist, and Baptist, and under like the guise of evangelical.
And weren't
Christian.
you made to feel like you feared for your parents and stuff,
All
right?
the time, yeah. I was I don't know any left behind people. I hope that phrase didn't bring anyone back to horrible times. But yeah, like as a kid, I grew up with the you need to accept the void. Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, because if your parents are Christians and you're not, you will be left here on earth. You'll be left behind, burning alive in agonizing pain, and you can't die because the church got raptured out. And all just because you didn't accept Jesus into your heart. Your parents are up in heaven while hell on earth is currently happening.
And I
was 11 when I heard that, by the way, and I turned out great.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, this is why, and we're going to talk about this, you know, how horror is such a great infusion with religion because of many of the themes and the tones of it. And I want y'all to also think about what's some of your favorite horror movies or series that have religious undertones in it, because, and what do you think are some of the worst ones?
I wanted to bring, like, one more thing about Bev and the Bev character. It was cool because while I wasn't Catholic, my dad is, and the Catholic Boy Scout troop I went to that made me relate was very relatable. And I had both a good Bev and a really bad Bev who just judged everyone and hated my mom. And then there was like, because she was Lutheran, and then there was like the good Bev who loved everybody, and she was a liberal, lighthearted Christian. She loved people. That's missing nowadays. But like, she's a very wonderful woman. One of my best friend's moms, and that was the good Bev. And then we had an evil Bev.
And I think everyone has always like had.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you were. I mean, I remember when I was going to a church up in San Francisco. I loved it. It was really one of those, I mean, as Baptists, you can find those bigger churches that are a little bit more lively and stuff. But one of the meetings I went to afterwards, where I wanted to try to get more involved with the church, first thing they were talking about was the women of the church were like, what are we going to do about this Harry Potter? This Harry Potter has got to go. And it was just, and I was out of my depth because I was like, well, I don't read Harry Potter and say, but I'm like, the things they were talking about getting rid of, I was just like, what? Like, what does that have to do with, being saved and being a good person? You know?
I get that. Yeah, right.
Okay, so
let's teach witchcraft.
Witchcraft and things like that, which, it's in the Bible. There is parts of the Bible that talk about not falling straight and things like that. Okay, so let's talk about some of the actual, the major plot lines that happened in this thing before we get into like the overall best moments and story and characters and stuff like that. Okay, so I want to put in here the first kind of plot line, which was Aaron and Riley. For those who are watching this, I have a picture of Aaron and Riley with their soul touching, interwoven. Is it love? Is it romantic love? Or is it just like soulmates understanding each other kind of existence? Who knows? What did you think? And what did you think of this plot line? Michael, did you think it was one of the stronger ones? I felt like for me, it was kind of their characters, well, especially Riley's character. His character was it was interesting because the way they kind of did the trailer for this show was making it seem like he'd be super, super centrally focused. And he kind of wasn't, right? It was kind of like a bait and switch, kind of a red herring a little bit, because they made you think he would be kind of like the one to kind of end things and go to battle with the priest. And yeah, he played a pivotal role, but more so in getting Aaron to kind of see things. But even then, Aaron was kind of almost helpless herself almost with the situation. What did you think of this plot line with them and Aaron's situation and Riley?
Oh man, it was one of my favorite parts of the show. It was definitely a very important catalyst. Like watching it, I thought it was very fascinating how they're coming back together, and you got this guy who looks like Breaking Bad, Jesse Pinkman meets Macklemore, and like he comes in. Then you have Aaron Green, who
Seagal.
Yeah, Katie Seagal.
Who is no stranger to Mike Flanagan's work as being his wife as well. So
Yeah, and I thought they're both really good actors, and I like what they represented. And in a way, what is the guy's name again? It just left.
Riley.
Riley. I think he was being used with the good of the island. You know, he's not. He's a normal person. I identified with him a little bit, and I like living not being that religious in a town where everybody's just captivated by it. And I thought that their love on a deep soulmate level was very good. And even though it was kind of a red herring, it also was the catalyst to help good kind of prevail in the island. And I thought it was wild when they started drinking the vampire blood, and she like lost her baby, and we didn't really know how or why it was happening. I was reading a few articles. I'm sorry, Mrs. Journalist, I can't cite this. It was when the show came out.
Okay.
But I know Miss Green.
Aaron Green.
Aaron Green, yeah. Carrie White, Aaron Green. Stephen King. Where was I going with this? Yeah, I liked what she was, and I was reading an article. Yes, I was reading an article, and apparently she's comparable to a biblical figure who got the wrong end of the stick, called Lilith. And somebody was trying to like dissect a little bit of Lilith plot point from like the back books of the Bible
to Aaron.
To Aaron Green, yeah,
that's interesting. I don't know if I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but it made me think even further in this. Okay. You know, she loses a child, she loses a love, she loses a lot.
Well, for those who don't know, Lilith's story, if you go with a certain scroll of the Bible, because this is prequel stuff, deep cut stuff of the Bible. Yeah. Supposedly there was a woman before Eve, right? And her name was Lilith, and she was with Adam. I forgot his name. She was with Adam, and basically she wasn't feeling him or something like that. And I think in some cases she wasn't made from his rib. In the Bible, Eve was made from his rib to be more submissive to him, supposedly. And Lilith originally wasn't, and so she wasn't feeling Adam. So she called the secret name of God. And then she left and she was spirited away. Now, of course, men took this story to say she was then turned into a demon that killed babies.
Yeah, and also a very popular video game franchise called Diablo 4 has her as the main villain. So she's a very popular name. And yeah, but going back, sorry if we sidetrack off of Lilith. I just thought
Ted is agreeing. He says, I think Lilith is a huge stretch in terms of comparing it to Aaron. But I get it. There's a biblical stuff, you know? And let us know, y'all. If y'all saw some characters that kind of have biblical references, definitely let us know. I want to see what some of y'all are saying in the chat. Ray, thanks for joining us, Ray. Ray is saying the connection that these two, Aaron and Riley, have for me really grounds the town, Riley and Aaron. Yeah. I love the bait and switch that you follow Riley the entire series until the very end, when you realize it's now his story. It's not his story anymore. It's Aaron who is the true protagonist. Reminds me of Sucker Punch, the film. And did they ever say what happened to Aaron's baby? What was that about? Well, basically, the blood, as Michael was pointing out, the blood that they were taking basically like rejuvenated the cells and stuff. And it would the two ways of going about this. You could say that her body went back into a woman who had never been pregnant, or you could interpret it as her body literally ate her baby for nourishment.
Or do you think it went even further and restored her to when she never even had sex?
I mean, you could go that far. Yeah. I was thinking that too, but I didn't know for sure. I mean, because we had no scene where she was like, you know, so it was like nothing else. Because like the doctor from off the island was telling her, it's like, you look like you've never been pregnant. You basically have a body as a woman who's never been pregnant before. So I think basically it just basically rejuvenated her body till before she had a child. So, which was very, heartbreaking. For me, when it came to these characters, I I agree with y'all. I think they grounded it. I don't think they were the
Mm-hmm.
most. I don't think. To me, there were more interesting characters for me, just in terms
Fair.
of characters I wanted to dive into and spend more time with. But they were definitely the two characters that kind of focused in on everything. They kind of put everything in perspective. They were kind of commenting on what was going on. They were a little bit not so much drinking the Kool-Aid, but they also weren't complete outsiders. So you got to see both of that, as opposed to like Sheriff, who was, you know, a little bit of an outsider, and then you had others who were drinking the Kool-Aid. They wouldn't; those other characters wouldn't have been dependable protagonists necessarily.
Yeah.
But so I enjoyed them, and you know, I also like the fact that they didn't make it like sexual between them. They just,
Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily platonic either, but there was something very deep with
I
them. I also think
I
they had some of perhaps the longest dialogue scenes, and some of them
mm-hmm.
were kind of
Yeah.
ridiculously long. But in that same vein, they also both had some of the the better, in terms of the things they
Yeah.
were saying, some of the most profound things as well, especially Aaron and Riley's whole discussion about what happens when you die. I thought that was very super friggin' powerful. And
Yeah.
the when it came back around when she was dying on the ground, that was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
What are you
And
gonna
I'm glad
say?
I was gonna say I'm glad she's back with him. And yeah, these two were probably my favorite couple in a Mike Flanagan thing that he's done.
Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
Josh. Thanks for joining us in the
Hey.
chat. Yeah, let's see what some of y'all are saying. Ray is saying Lilith was made and was an equal to Adam, but she wouldn't submit, so she was demonized and became the first demon. Then later on, Eve is created. Yeah, depending on who's telling the story, right? That's
Yeah.
always a thing. Okay, so we had them two. So you're saying, were one of these characters one of your favorite characters? Like, if you had top three, were they in your top three?
Yeah, one of them was. Yeah, definitely.
Which one?
Oh, wow, that's really tough.
You just said
Because
one
I'm
of them
more.
was top three.
It was definitely. I know, but it's hard because then there are other good characters on top of this. But
Okay.
it's almost a tie between Aaron and Riley, just like as a couple. Because and you were talking about like they didn't have to show any sex. I think that was also implied because like they're very deep talking to each other. They're spending a lot of time at her house, and I think that was all implied. But I think just as a couple, a character couple that moved the story along, they're in my top three. But I would probably go with Riley being in my
Okay.
top three.
On two. Okay. Will is saying hearing her scream after seeing her boy die was almost hard to listen to. It really was. And they
Mm-hmm.
basically had it so the scream kept going during the credits
Yeah.
of that episode. That was, oh man, I kind of saw it coming, right? When he went to her and they were going, I knew it was coming when they went out on the water. I was like, there's no way for him to get back on time. And he's sitting there and he's not in a rush or whatever. And unless he dives into the water or something like that, I was like, this is happening. I just wondered if it was going to be something where it was kind of well, maybe he's a better vampire or something, so it won't happen to him or something like that. You know, the thing with, you know, him choosing to die, I kind of understood it because he told her, he was like, I'm going to want you to leave, but I know you're going to want to save this town, but I'm not going to eat anybody or anything like that. So I'm going to go. And I thought he got a proper ending. I want to know what you all think. And Michael, tell me what you think. When he saw the girl that he had killed by accident in the end, do you think that was real, or you think that was his brain creating the most beautiful dream? Because that was one of his things when they had that whole conversation about death and dying. Riley, his idea was that your brain makes you have the most beautiful dream right before it turns into nothing. And it can go on for however or whatever, but right before it turns into nothing, your brain makes you have the most beautiful dream, and then you die.
I'm sure even if that happened to me, I'd still be in a high school and I'm failing an English test.
Oh, geez. Hopefully it will be a lot better than that.
Hopefully it'll be a lot better, but that's a reoccurring dream. Like, why am I in school?
That's a recurring
I'm 30.
nightmare. But you get what I'm saying? Like, he had a moment where he was, you know, he had that. So do you think that was, because this is a supernatural show, right? So do you think that was his heaven? Like he was really just being forgiven? Or do you think that was his brain creating that conclusion for him. And let me know what y'all think in the chat and also the replay.
Yeah, I think that was like his guilt going away, and also, when you die, you have that dream apparently. But it could very well be God forgiving him because he did a good thing. Like, he fully redeemed himself, and that the woman who died in the car crash coming back, he redeemed himself. It was a great arc, and she should appear, and everything should be okay. Mm-hmm. Because Riley went from this troubled youth to, like, almost not a messiah, but like
a grounded young man. Yeah,
a grounded young man who had savior capabilities in his own way, because he saved Aaron. Yeah.
In a way, yeah.
In a way, yeah.
And I think at the same time, it's almost like, does it even matter whether it was just his dream, his beautiful dream, giving him a great send-off, or was it real, whatever that means. So I think either way, he got his happy ending, even if it was just that moment, right? Yeah. Blake is saying, Christian, mostly Catholic themes in horror movies are formulaic and too predictable. Midnight Mass avoided most staples like crucifixes turning down, catching fire. Exactly. Yes. Will is saying that Riley's dream was probably his redemption. And Fred is saying, when perceived it as being, wait a minute, what did you say? I perceived it as being real. Okay, so Fred is believing that was really that was really the afterlife. He was being welcomed somewhere by this person. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I love that it kind of gave you the chance to kind of decide it for yourself. Mm-hmm. It didn't really make it too clear based off of their things, right? So then next we have the sheriff Hassan, and his plot line. I wanted a little bit more of the sheriff and his son. I thought that they were going to get a bit more focus. So I was kind of waiting for that a little bit. I almost kind of thought he was going to emerge as the hero. I mean, he was the hero. He actually did. He was one of the heroes, but I thought he was going to emerge as one of the main, he was one of the main. Like, basically, I thought he was going to get a lot more screen time. More so. Yeah. But I loved his character. I loved him in Bly Manor too. He was one of my faves in Bly Manor.
Yeah, that's right. He was. He's in my top 3 in Bly.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the thing. I was frustrated with him with his son. I'm glad his son came back around in the end, but it was really heartbreaking to watch, kind of like feeling alienated in a town, and on top of that, your son basically rebukes you too. When he had that confrontation with Bev in the school classroom, kind of bringing up the fact that Bev was handing people Bibles and stuff. And, her veiled, not so veiled racism was popping out in Islamophobia. I got so mad for him because she was able, by basically bombarding him and all of them with a whole bunch of Bible verses, kind of getting everyone over to her side. And it just kind of drove home the alienation that he felt. I wanted him to live, to be honest, but I'm glad he went out the way he wanted to, and him and his son were reunited in the end, even if it was the way it was. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, the sheriff is one of my all-time favorite characters of the show. He's in my top 3 of this show. And, like, going back to relatability, when I was in this Catholic Boy Scout troop, it was right around the time, the Afghanistan-Iraqi war was, either fairly new or, amping up. And I heard so many Islamophobic discussions that Bev's conversation, her racism, took me back to that. And was it was just cringe, because I felt exactly, I've seen people getting spoke to in a way in real life, having to deal with it. And it was almost cringeworthy, but it was it's not too on the nose because people are like this. And that was great. And the sheriff and the son, oh man, teen angst taking hold in religion. Wow. That's not a familiar territory with me. Yeah. But as someone who, if their religion is their everything, and then their son is going down a different path, it might also play with, the prodigal son returns.
Mm.
in a dark way, and I think that was fulfilled with that storyline.
Yeah, and Tad is saying, I love the relation between the sheriff and his son. And I did too. I was just frustrated with it because his son was being kind of grouped in with these people who, I mean, it would have been fine if his son wanted to go his own religion. That's fine. But to know, for us as the viewers to know what was happening and know what he was getting drawn into, it was like,
yeah.
I was a little confused. And I didn't know if this was a plot hole or what, because one of the things they were talking about when the son was telling him about going to it and taking in communion, he had said they're not going to let you do communion because you're not Catholic. So I was a little weirded out that he was able to come back to life, because I'm like, was he drinking the blood? Because if he was just visiting the church, did they let him drink the blood?
Well,
because wasn't it supposed to be you can't take in communion if you're not Christian?
Maybe, okay, here's my thing, and this is a little sketchy too because of how a small town it is, and everyone knew who did and didn't take communion. Maybe the kid wanted to be so much a part of it that he was able to get communion on his own, and it just was like, because people can make mistakes, but normally, like when I went to Catholic Mass with my friends, and I even went to midnight Mass on Christmas Eve, you had to go like this, and like you couldn't take it. They would just like bless you, and so maybe he got away with it. Maybe he got a little bit of the blood some way. Maybe
that was Bev trying to even push him even more by having him take it. I don't know. But I mean, I think we were supposed to just assume that he had drunk some of the wine at some point. It was just kind of, that's what I was scared of. When he was about to take the thing, I'm like, is no one remembering that? I was like, you're going to kill him off. Because I'm like, is no one remembering y'all don't let them take the blood because of not being Christian, not being Catholic. But I guess we were just supposed to assume when he came back that he had been drinking.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Yeah. Ray is saying, do you think as humans that we truly separate celestial and infernal entities through a human lens, when the separation is most likely much shorter? Maybe angels are pure logic without a soul. Well, that's deep. I don't know, Ray.
Great job, Ray.
We're gonna dive. We're gonna get into the religious aspects of this stuff, right? Okay, so we had the sheriff. So that was a thing with the sheriff. And so, let's talk about, I do kind of want to talk about one dude who I thought got the short end of the stick and I thought deserved. There were a few of them that got short ends of the stick, I felt like, in terms of certain characters that deserved better, but didn't get it. And, no, not her. I was about to bring up Bev, actually. Bev got what she deserved, actually.
No, yeah, she did.
She really, really did. Yeah, it was what was his name? Our town drunkard.
Yeah. Oh man.
I knew I kind of felt like he was gonna die. I saw it coming. Just because he was turning a new leaf and stuff. But that scene was probably the most haunting scene for me. One of the most haunting scenes was his death by the priest.
By
Father Paul, basically drinking, not from his neck, but biting into his skull. And they went back and showed more of it.
They did not hold back.
Did you like the fact that he died? I didn't like the fact that he died, but I thought that they did it to kind of drive home just how depraved they were a little bit, and to kind of, I felt like it was kind of smart to make it so he was the first obvious death.
Yeah.
Because it does put the audience in a weird position, because we're like, well, he did shoot that girl when he was a drunkard and he wasn't doing much with his life, so it's not that bad. But then it's like, well, he was getting his life together. Who's to say he deserved and he was supposed to get sacrificed? Because Bev makes this whole thing of he wasn't doing much with his life anyway. At least he could do is give his life to this cause. Did you think they did that on purpose? And do you think it was right that they killed him off? Or did you want something better for him? And I want to know what y'all think too.
I kind of wanted something a little better for him, but based on the curse of circumstances and based on like he was a character and also a plot device that was kind of sad. I thought I like that he got some sort of redemption, but it felt very like you could go, oh no, it's about to happen. Like you could see his inevitable demise. And at the same time, I thought it might have been maybe this is a deep cut, another Lilith deep cut. It was almost like it went against the grain of what religious people should do for the homeless or for the people who have an addiction or for the like the less fortunate. And the symbolism of this man getting ripped apart was wild. It solidified, but I think with people, the death was the tipping point.
Toddy fan is saying, thanks for joining us, Toddy fan. Is saying that death was the tipping point when it no longer is morally justified. But that's interesting, though. I feel like that was almost kind of what they made you wonder about by picking him to be the first to die, considering what his past was and everything like that. You almost are kind of like, who would miss him? And maybe it makes us uncomfortable as the audience to be like, well, maybe, I don't know. Like, I guess it kind of makes sense. For me, I immediately was just like, no, that's messed up. I liked his character. Also, I loved his dog, and I was just so mad about his dog. But I kind of also was like, it's kind of interesting because it would have been easy for Bev to kind of argue away why it was all right to take his life because he wasn't doing much with it anyway. I mean, don't people do that in real society?
They do.
You know, when people end up missing or something happens to somebody, a lot of people are the first thing people ask, like, oh, what were they? What did they do? Or something like that. And you're like, oh. And suddenly, you know, it's almost like people don't feel as bad depending on the type of person it was. And things, or you kind of think, well, that was gonna happen eventually. It just happened then, you know, like it's almost an easy way to dismiss a person's life. And I felt like in that moment, Flanagan was kind of making us have to make that decision too, you know, because up to that point, you kind of like Father Paul too. Father Paul's not a bad guy.
No.
So up to that point, you're like, well, I mean, it was a mistake, and you know, this dude did shoot a girl, like, you know. Will is saying, I did feel bad for him, but I guess that was the point, just to make you feel upset about something that was turning the life around. Yeah, exactly. Blake is saying his redemption arc was conditional. His recovery was molded by a cult. I hate to say it, but he would have been a diet version of Bev or the mayor's family, a good Christian, but not a good person. Okay. I don't know. Someone who's able to love a dog like that, I just think there's something inherently
he's a good person
about them. So I didn't think he was a bad guy. I just thought that he fell on hard times. Blake is saying Bev pivoted her talking points in the Bible meeting like a pro. That's not a compliment. It's a subconscious tactic that I've seen too many times at church. Yeah. Bev is something, y'all. He was one of the people I thought got kind of a short end of the stick there. And then, you know, there was Miss Bev herself, which I want to put her up on screen because
put her up.
It's been a long time since I absolutely love to hate a character, and that is congratulations to Flanagan for creating a character like that. Because usually I'm kind of the person sometimes that wants to see the redemption of certain villains, depending on what their origin story is. But this woman, this saintly, not so saintly woman, and I was glad that it was Riley's mom that told her off in a way, that kind of told her, you're not a good person. You know, Riley's mom was like, you're not a good person. I don't know if anyone needs to tell you this, but there's nothing that makes you more special than anyone else here. And whatever you do, you're not going to be better. And I think, you know, Toddy's actually pointed this out in the chat. Great commentary on the Christian right in the U.S. and how they can pretty much rationalize all sorts of evil acts as the will of God. And this was what I was getting at a little earlier when I talked about Flanagan's, Mike Flanagan's, the writer and director's, you know, letter he sent to the press where he was talking about this. He was talking about the real monstrous things that humans can do. And I think Bev, I think that's why she was just such a infuriatingly great villain, because she was the embodiment of misinformation. She was the embodiment of really racist, prejudiced thinking, and always having a Bible verse to justify why she was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the very end that she kind of really showed her true colors. And it was so funny to me that she was a character that was afraid to die. It was almost like she really
Yeah.
was. I mean, you know, afraid to
Mm-hmm.
die, because it was kind of like, well, if you're so pious and you think you're so good, what are you afraid of when it comes to the afterlife? What's there to be afraid of? Won't you be up in heaven like everybody else?
No, because she's all for the power.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many people, and that's what Toddy Fan was talking about. There's so many people out there that love Christianity for the power that it wields.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's nothing greater out there than toying with somebody's guilt about where are they going to go when they die. Like, you can, like, it's such, for like an evil person like Bev, you take so much joy into manipulating somebody's salvation. You can control their entire world to a point where they can even give you 10% of their income every week. It is a brilliant tactic, and that's what Toddy was talking about. Like, yeah, the U.S. religious right can do that.
Yeah. Blake is saying Sam Sloan was amazing as Bev. Yeah, she was. I have to keep reminding myself that they're two separate people, right? And she's a chameleon, really, because if people remember, she was in Haunting of Hill House. She played the wife of the writer son.
Oh,
And I mean, they aged her for this clearly, because she just
yeah,
looked night and day. And then Ray is actually pointing out she was also in Grey's Anatomy as Penny and things like that. So it was very interesting, and she played it so well. And it was, you know, and yeah, Will is pointing out she became super desperate to live towards the end. And I think that comes from the fact that, like you were saying, Michael, that it's not about necessarily real faith for these people. It's about the power here on earth through using faith as a tool to you know, to do it. And you know, this is one of the things that I had wrote about when I was exploring the question of religion that that Flanagan kind of talks about, you know, because I was saying, you know, this is not a show filled with jump scares, but rather it's defined by fear that plays on the human condition. You know, there's definitely monsters, but the viewers will have to decide if the scarier ones are those found in the supernatural or those among our human neighbors, right? You know, because we've seen the damage that can be brought about from mobs of fanatics believing their cause as a righteous one. You know, it was kind of crazy, the visual scene where these people are humming, oh, come to the midnight mass church, and then right after, these same people are going out ripping people to shreds.
yeah,
How quickly it was such seeing the blood run down, seeing them get people out of their homes was such a visceral like just terrifying thing, because this is the thing, we are no strangers in the history of ourselves to mobs that kill people because they think they're right about something.
yeah.
You know, it's
About
not.
we're 10 months away from the last time that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and this is the thing, I don't think that this, and I want to know what y'all thoughts are as we kind of segue into, you know, the overall thing. I do want to talk about the priest a little bit, Father Paul, but I mean, with Father Paul, it's pretty straightforward. He was a man who was a faith, but then he kind of even explained himself that he wanted to live forever. He was afraid, he was mad at getting old. So his real human condition kind of came out on that. So that's just kind of where he was. But I want to know what y'all think. And Michael, I'm curious of your thoughts. Do you think this series was a condemnation of organized religion, or do you think it was kind of a more of a complex saying there's some really bad things that can come from it? Or do you think it was more balanced? Do you think this was a balanced look at organized religion?
Based as from somebody who could easily have lived in this island at one point or another, in a small town, because small religious towns also do feel like an island. There's both really good people in religion who are in it because they're genuinely good people and they believe the message and the good works and they wish to relay those works. And then there are the Bevs of the world. I know I've said this before, but I'm just summing it up. I think it was definitely under a microscope. And it's kind of like an overall explanation of what religion in America has become.
Mm-hmm.
It's you got your skeptics.
Well, not just America. You got the Taliban.
Yeah, you know, you got the Taliban too. No, easily, yeah, but I mean, as far as like, yeah, I'm sorry for just my closed-minded American.
Yeah, this was placed in America, so yeah.
But yeah, also we have to understand here, Father Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
He literally kidnapped a dude and brought him over.
Kidnapped a vampire. Now, I don't know if it was kidnapped.
Does that count as kidnapping?
No, because I think he willingly came.
Okay,
I think the vampire willingly came because it felt like he was going to get some food.
Okay, right? That's fair. Then
I want to ask you, I actually have a question about the vampire too. But let's see what some of y'all are saying. Ray is saying, can we talk about the Mind F to portray such a devout woman also be one of the most evil and compromised spirits that led her flock to a slaughter? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Blake is pointing out the build up to the visual was spiritually beautiful and haunting. It was so beautiful, but also very haunting, especially to see what that same mob ended up turning into. Tad is saying spot on, Michael, in terms of your thoughts, and Toddy saying spot on, Chauncey. This was a show about extreme ideologies and unflinching faith in them. And Ray is saying, shouldn't we question the logic of the flock? There is such need for sheep to find a shepherd, and for good reason. Some people need guidance that there are for more wolves in the world than shepherds. And this is the thing too. I mean, I read one time, and this is one of the things I was questioning, that are humans like the only alive beings, right, who feel the need for religion and faith? Like, we've always had, it seems like from the time we are understanding, to be, to worship beings. You had the religion of the Greek gods, you had the religion of the Egyptian gods, you had the religion of the moon and the sky and stuff. There's always been this thing to look towards a bigger being than ourselves. And then within those, you have people who claim to have connection to that more than everyone else. I mean, if you remember, at one time, the Bible was not made readily available to everyone. Yeah. At one point, the Bible was just in Latin, and only the priest could read it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't allowed to be read by the churchgoers. It was something that could only be read by the priest, kind of keeping things in the control of certain powers. We also know that in the Bible, there were things where, they inserted the whole thing of being a good slave and being a good slave master to justify slavery, depending on who was doing the editing, right? And
Mitch McConnell even used the Bible when Trump was president for immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be manipulated time and time again.
And I think that's what's so interesting about this, because it's not just religion, though, right? Like Toddy is pointing out, capitalism is a religion, too. There's things that are sets of beliefs that if enough people believe it, they follow it like dogma, right? Like one of the things I was saying, I was like, the fear in this show is so tangible because it feels so possible of our own world, right? There's a technical separation between church and the, U.S., but it gets, weird. And we know dogma can make people shoot up pizza places, right? Because they think they're holding kids in the back of pizza places, or that this one singular letter person with the Q knows all the inner secrets and about, Democrats eating babies. Like, it doesn't always have to be God, or whatever, but it definitely plays into dogma. To me, I don't think this show was more so a condemnation of organized religion, but a condemnation of people using the tool of organized religion and the dangers that can be of blind faith. I think it's really the danger of blind faith, not so much of what the faith is teaching, but of the blind faith people can have in it, right? Let's just talk about capitalism, just the idea where you got working people who will defend people like Elon Musk and stuff and his riches and his choice not to want to pay taxes, because it's like, well, if I was rich, I wouldn't want to pay tax, because this belief, because it's a belief. There's nothing. The
prosperity gospel.
Yeah, there's nothing proving it that a rich person is inherently smarter than a working class person. But there's this belief that gets perpetuated, and people believe it blindly to the point where they will talk themselves out of proper pay. and things. And those are just non-secular type things, right? So I just think it's so interesting. And I that's to me what was so scary about this show, because we see it. We've seen it, you know. You had the young girls, you had Lisa's parents, who one was the mayor of the town, and how much he was brought into the inner circle and was in the lead of doing these things, you know, because he saw his daughter get get healed. But mind you, a key thing with this show was the fact that everyone was dealing with economic hardship.
Yeah.
Right? This was a town that sold some of its land to the oil companies and all this other stuff, and they were desperate. And at times of vulnerability, people can turn to things that aren't necessarily good for them because people seek answers, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And I think, there's that. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, B. Neon said the Roman had so many slaves. Yes, they did. Tad is saying the Bible has been rewritten so many times it's incomprehensible.
There's even a Bible verse in the back of the book of Revelation that's like, ye old copyright infringement. And it's like, like, ye whoever decides to edit this book shall be taken out of the book of life itself. And it's like, okay, King James, I see what you're doing. It's I should reference it. Sorry, this is turning into the 700 Club, but it's in the far back.
Yeah.
Let us pray together, Chelsea. Let us pray for that mega jet we can get.
the prosperity. Tanya is saying people look for groups to belong to for reasons to explain the unexplainable. And I think that's all of us. I think we all seek answers to things. I mean, I'm a spiritual person. I think those who have seen my live stream know that I am, especially when I talk about the show Evil and all the religious horror elements of that. But I think the danger that you have is blind faith, that you don't question, that you aren't discerning. And I think this is what we see. And that's why this is such a relevant show, because we see it, y'all. I don't know what your affiliations and things are. I don't want to ruffle feathers or whatever, but we've seen it. We've seen so soon people holding on to beliefs that aren't based in any kind of evidence except their own conviction. And it is costing lives.
Yep.
Right. Ray is saying, I think this was a snapshot of organized religion and some of the pitfalls of attributing such divine faith in flawed beings, regardless of the spiritual institution. Maybe more critique on that. I think so too. Will is asking, did the vampire die at the end, or did I miss that? I think the vampire died because I felt like it was a little bit of a deep cut of how vampire stuff works, because the young girl, Lisa, she said at the end she couldn't feel her legs. And I think that meant that the person who made her died. Because isn't that vampire lore a little bit?
Yeah,
that
the
if
main vampire
dies, it can affect all the other ones.
Yeah.
B. Fred said the 700 Club element laughed my ass off.
And that reminds me, Chelsea.
Is that the copyright thing?
Yeah, it's Revelation 22:19. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part from the book of life, from the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book.
That's one way to scare people to not.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that they did it. They did it already.
Yeah.
It's just, what.
The new King James, not the old.
Yeah. Neon Moon is saying, the vampire was a demon. And let's talk about that. We're going to talk about that in a second, y'all. Tad is asking, will you put a link on how to find Michael down below? I will, y'all, because you want to follow him, because he's great. I think so. Okay, so let's see. Ray saying, I think we can abdicate our connection to the divineness of being and consciousness to an institution that is flawed and human. We go to dangerous places that highlight the darkest aspects of humanity. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things this show kind of takes on. I mean, look at what Father Paul was doing. He thought he was doing something good. It was a beautiful scene, him doing like one of my fave episodes was his confession. was the episode that had his confession in it, where he's talking to someone who's not there, but he opens and he goes in confession. This is kind of how you see what happened to him and everything. I kind of saw it coming that he was he was actually the older priest. But the way it's, framed is he really truly believes he's doing something good. Whether or not he believed the vampire was truly an angel, or maybe it was about perception that, well, this thing saved me, it can't be all bad. And I found it in Jerusalem. So, I mean, what else could it be?
They have the holiest vampires. It's true.
Yes. So it's kind of like, maybe there was some truth to, I don't think Father Paul was the evil person, right? I think he truly had beliefs. I think more so he was pushed by wanting to be with his love Mildred again. But I think at the end, he did want to help people. It was just misguided because of what the sacrifice was. But I mean, haven't we all been, presented with things of, to get the glory, you got to go through the pain or something like that. And that, God works in mysterious ways, even in the face of like cruelty, or, there are, I think it was actually Bev that used this, a vengeful God, an angry God, and that people talk about God that is going to be just, and I've seen this in actual real documentaries with Christians, where there's the whole thing of them believing that Jesus is coming back, not as some soothsayer, but as a warrior, and that they're going to have to do battle. Right. And this was the kind of sermon that Father Paul gave, where Mildred, when she was looking younger and she showed up, she walked down, she's like, never go back to that church. I don't know who that person is, but it's not the person I knew, because he had basically she had seen that he had come to a point in being like, and come to a point of being, of just no return. You know what I'm saying? So it was that. And Ray is pointing out it's called a sire. Yeah, sire. Like, I don't watch the vampire. I didn't watch the Vampire Diaries, but that vampire was the sire of them. So I think once he died, that turned everyone back.
Oh, cool.
That's what you kind of think happened, because she couldn't feel her legs and stuff. But let's talk about it. So how many of you, when you saw the vampire, we're calling it a vampire, but we do know in the First Testament, right? In the Old Testament, the angels were considered really friggin' scary looking. Like, it wasn't until the New Testament, I'm going deep dive with y'all. It wasn't until the New Testament where angels became like fair-skinned white people, usually in the pictures, with, big wings and stuff like that, very beautiful looking and stuff like that. But back in the Old Testament, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but weren't they like
horrific?
They were described as really scary looking.
Yeah, like,
and so go ahead.
It kind of displays, it kind of in a weird way defeats the logic of like man is made in God's image, but these other angels back in the day in the Old Testament are so freaky and horrific. And it was like, well, whose image are they made in? Like, it's very weird, like monsterish, what we would call a monster. So you have a very good point that maybe it wasn't a vampire, maybe it was a blood-sucking angel.
That's the question. So do you think that what was made the vampire was actually really an angel?
It could be a fallen angel.
But they were the same. Like, it's one and the same. I mean, how scary would that be, though? That it actually was an angel, but he's just fucked up. Excuse my language. But he was just like, that's maybe how they really could be.
Like, if he showed up at the door, or it showed up. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
That angel that you saw was really, you know what I'm saying? And I want to know what y'all think, because to me, I'm like, wouldn't that be the most crazy thing to be like, well, no one actually called it a vampire, right? Even when Bev saw it and all this other stuff, they all were saying this is still an angel.
Yeah.
But we can't, when it came in with the robes and everything, I was like, wow, maybe this is an angel and it's just really screwed up.
Yeah. Old Testament in Jerusalem. Yeah. It could have been.
Yeah. Okay, so Blake is saying, I'm on Team Angel. They were terrifying witness and unearth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying, the witness, and unearthly, right? Nehemiah is saying, oh, sorry. Everybody's white in the Bible. Rolling my eyes. Yes, Josh, they are. They use your except Jesus.
Yeah.
Depending on what you read, skin like bronze. But no one ever wants to talk about that for reasons. Ray is saying, I think Father Paul flipped his humanity switch. Aaron might as well move to Mystic Falls. Oh yeah, Mystic Falls. Let me see. I didn't read this part, but Blake was saying demon, angel, vampires are somewhat interchangeable. Some faiths say demons are fallen angels, although I would have loved it if the vampires made of flaming rings and covered in eyes, right? Isn't that one of the looks that we get description of the angel? And I think that's what's so interesting about that, because Flanagan never really makes it clear, right? He doesn't have some person come from the outside like, oh my gosh, no guys, that's actually a vampire. He's been fooling you the whole time. There's never a moment like that. It's just the idea of there's something really wrong here. Even if this is an angel, what are we sacrificing for this so-called faith? You know?
Everything.
Like, what if some person came down and had like powers like Jesus that we know, made water into wine and walked and healed people and stuff, but then they told you, okay, I'm Jesus, what you heard, the rumors are true, I'm Jesus, it's good, but I'm gonna need y'all to kill the firstborns. You know, you got to do that. We need that to go down. I mean, what do? Because you've been told this guy is Jesus, and maybe your feeble human brain can't comprehend that, you know, things work in mysterious ways.
There are people who have done that and they're in prison.
Yes, that is very true.
I've seen that. I'm from Florida. I've seen those news stories before.
Yes, we both have seen.
Yeah,
you are a Florida man, so you would know better than I would.
People do kill their firstborn for.
Tad is saying if that was an angel, he needs to get to Kathy Lee Gifford's doctor ASAP. But that's the thing. Angels in the Old Testament were considered, and you know, like Blake was pointing out, at one point, demons. The word demon actually means knowledge. That's the original term, I think, in Latin. It means knowledge. And I think it was back in the Roman or Greek time where there was a belief that demons, it wasn't considered an evil thing. Demons weren't, now it sounds evil to us, but at one time, demon was not an evil word. And they were just considered beings that were, it was believed that humans couldn't talk directly to God. So they needed beings that could help them talk to God. And that's what demons were.
Wow.
And then somewhere along the line, depending on who was telling what story, it got switched around to demons being bad or fallen angels.
Those
angels
Christians
being created. But that's the actual real origin of the word demon. It means knowledge. It means that basically they know. And it was also described that demons could be bad or good. You could have a good demon, you can have a bad demon. It's kind of similar to I believe Islam, where you have the Dijin. The Dijin, I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right. Y'all know, I think y'all know, Dijin, where they are spirits that can be both bad or good. It's kind of similar to that. While in Christianity, Catholicism, it's the idea that demons are inherently bad, angels are the good ones.
Whoa.
That's just basically that's just where we got. But I'm interested, you know, if y'all thought that maybe that was, you know, his weird way of claiming like, no, those are actually angels and they're just really fucked up, messed up looking, and the angel is a vampire.
That's how dark the show is.
Yeah, depending on your faith, right? Depending on your faith, that's what you would get. So I thought that was something.
You dropped 2 F-bombs. This is really dark material.
Excuse my language.
Yeah,
usually you can curse in the later part of the stream. It won't mess with monetization. So I kind of have to wait. I just can't do it before then.
Well, fuck yeah.
Okay. It has to be within reason. Okay. I actually want to show one of the supposed pictures of the old angels, right? This one. Put this one. So if y'all can see that, it's like, you know, the thing has the head and it's looking like it's coming from some weird plant. Like that's the old school angel.
Ooh.
Yeah. As Ray is saying, knowledge has always been demonized in the Bible. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
just think about it. Eve and Adam were punished for taking the fruit of knowledge. Okay.
Wow.
So, so I just kind of wanted to show that picture. It's fascinating, right? Neon Moon is like,
Yeah.
Right? It's creepy.
Like bunch of shrimp cocktails with a head.
Right. Toddy's fan is saying the devil used to be an angel after all, right? Exactly.
Yeah, he did.
Even the idea of Satan has changed over the years. I mean, that's also a whole thing of who was Satan first and if that was considered inherently bad. Okay, so let's get, so I mean, there's a lot to deep dive into when it comes to the religion. And it I just think it's so fascinating, and I just love exploring that kind of stuff. And like I said, I don't think this show was a condemnation of religion. I think some people at face value kind of took it like that this was basically saying religion is bad, organized religion is bad. I am still one of those people where I don't group or all organized religion into one big thing, although I can acknowledge that religion as a tool has been used in really crappy ways.
Yeah.
But there have been good ways, like one of the main organizing spaces in the civil rights movement here was the Black church, right? Black churches helped to organize the civil rights movement, took part in that. And we've had other things. You have, I think there's this really great organization, I think, called Jews for Justice. And this is, they're, religious Jewish people who basically go out and march and things like that. You see a lot of that. Toddy fan is saying, my opinion of Satan comes from the Da Vinci Code. Yeah, they kind of, I love that stuff. It's great. But
my depiction comes from South Park.
Oh my gosh, that one. Neon Moon is saying Ray is basically our theologian. Yeah. Ray. He got the deep dives going.
Ray's killing it. Great
Ray
job,
is saying Lucifer and giving knowledge to man got him cast out of paradise, among other things, and his followers being bringers of knowledge is fascinating. Yeah. See what some of y'all are saying. Blake is saying Silva Day has a 2-book trilogy. Book 3 wasn't published, called the Renegade Angel series that has angels and vampires being two sides of the same coin. That's interesting. Ray is saying, I don't think they are women. We keep it consistent with how the church views the fallible. I think it's fascinating that Christians love and worship almost androgynous or ambiguous beings as pure. Yeah, it gets hypocritical, right? In terms of certain things. I remember one story of the Bible. Who was cursed? It was one of Noah's sons or something. Someone was cursed because the guy was naked. And one of his sons kind of backed up and threw the thing over him, but the other son just kind of looked and did it. And that son, because he knowed him, because that's what the translation was in the Bible, got punished because he looked at his dad naked. Not like in a sexual way, he just happened to look at him. I forgot which one that was. Yeah,
what book is that? That's the one they scare you with no source. Like, I've heard that exact same one. Like, I'm not making fun of it.
I forget who. I don't know if it was. Well, I know in Noah's Ark, his daughter slept with him. And that was weird because they were afraid that it was the end of the world. So they ended up sleeping with their dad, afraid that they'd never be able to have kids. The Bible gets real nuts. It's very fascinating, and it's not PG. It's quite something. It's funny because Bev and Sheriff Hassan actually have this debate in the classroom because Bev, even Sheriff Hassan says your Bible has certain things in it that aren't that great, and Bev's like, well, that's true. And then she kind of pushes it like his is, is more violent than hers, which is, come on. Firstborns getting killed, plagues, don't look back, you'll turn into sand. I mean, it gets violent in there.
Dragons.
Ham, that's who it was. Thank you, Gemma. Gemma is saying, thanks for joining us. She said, I believe that's Ham in Genesis. I think you're right. I think it was either Ham or Job, because I've always been told that Job is supposed to be the descendants of Black people, because he was cursed, and that's why we have darker skin. You hear crap like that. That's the certain things you hear depending on who wants to tell you stuff from the Bible.
Wow. All right.
I remember my brother, he went to some classes, supposedly about religion when he was young. He always tells me this story, and I said it can be used for both ways, right? Like that was used to vilify Black people. And then my brother, he went to one some years ago. He was young. He was like 12 or 13. He took some classes, so it's supposed to be spiritual classes, and the guy goes in there and the teacher explains to him that white people are the descendants of angels mating with lions, and that's why they have blonde hair. And that's why they have the color eyes that they do. These are things, depending on who is considering themselves the authority, the way that they twist.
The Tiger King dyed his mullet.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just things like that. It's crazy. Okay, so y'all,
wow,
I could go on for this for hours.
Yeah, for real.
I really could.
I'm trying to find.
You got your Bible out. Yeah, and Toddy is pointing out scientific racism is and was a real thing for so long.
Started in the late 1800s.
Blake is saying, random fact, most children's Bibles show 2 male lions on Noah's Ark. I stand my gay lions.
Yes.
Truly worse in mysterious ways. Yeah.
Love wins, man.
I do know that picture. Where there's like, yeah, because they both got the mane, right?
Like,
and they shouldn't both have the mane because they're both men.
Those lions outsmarted God.
But this is what we're talking about, the idea of who's using the religion and what they're trying to justify, right? And that's the danger to me when information or lack of information is used to justify things. And I think that was the real terror in this show. The scariest character to me was Bev. I did get creeped out by the vampire because it was just creepy, especially the way that vampire was drinking people's blood. Was there some? I felt like there was something weirdly sexual about that. Like he couldn't get turned away when he's sucking the blood and all. I was so uncomfortable watching that. I'm like, I think that's the point, that I'm so uncomfortable that he's violating these people. It almost felt like he was violating them. Even with Erin's death, it felt like she was being violated by this vampire, you know? Although she was like, you know, cutting his thing, which was boss of her towards the end.
So good. Great way to go out.
Yeah. So I asked you all in the beginning of this to tell me, you know, because we were talking about horror and religion in horror. And yes, Ty fan, vampires usually are totally about sex. At one time when vampires first came about, they were used as a way to scare people about syphilis because they were supposed to be a representation of sexual diseases. Ha! Funny that, right? The history.
I'm learning a ton on here. I also
read a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you're very well read. And also I want to give this show credit because I learned a lot about the Quran. And I didn't know where the Quran stood in the books of the Bible and like the religious tomes that are out there, like the Torah and then the Bible and then the Quran. I didn't know the Quran was the third book in that thing, which I thought was very fascinating.
And I think we talked about that because I was like, the Quran actually considers itself the continuation of the Bible or the final say so in it, but it incorporates all those other things within it.
You know who else, though, wants to come off as the third book of the Bible? Mormons.
Okay.
Yeah, the Book of Mormon is apparently the third book too. So that I thought that was very fascinating. The Quran makes way more sense because they came out around the same time.
Yeah.
And not like 2,000 years later.
Yeah. Okay, y'all. So I wanted to ask, what are some of your favorite religious horror movies or horror movies that have religion undertones? I think a good one too that I know many of you are going to name probably because they're classics is The Omen and The Exorcist. But I was wondering if people have other ones that maybe don't get a lot of play that are just as good when it comes to kind of exploring the religion. Y'all are going to laugh at me. I actually enjoy The Prophecy.
Yeah, I'm a vampire.
He does a great impersonation. He really does.
Flying around like a bat.
For those of you who don't know, yes, the Prophecy, only because of his character's explanation of the way angels viewed humans, of talking monkeys and things. And I just thought it was action packed, but that's one of my faves. That's one of my faves. Tad is saying The Omen, The Exorcist, The Seventh Seal were all great movies that incorporate religion. Yes, Christopher Walken. Yes, Toddy. I know. Y'all are side-eyeing me. It's not the deepest movie in the world. It really isn't.
It's a good film. I enjoy it. Take the time.
In terms of just, I love religion. My other one, in terms of the remixing of religion, is actually Constantine with Keanu Reeves. I thought that was really good, just kind of creating a universe around religion with its own kind of rules and things like that, but still incorporating some of the moralities of it and the contradictions. I actually thought, that was also a good one. So those are two of the ones that stand out to me in terms of faves. Do you have any, Michael? I know The Omen is one of your faves.
All-time favorites. I know that's been brought up a ton. I love The Omen. I actually want to watch it this week. Not just saying that, but as movies that do have religious themes in them, but aren't like fully discussed in a dogmatic way. Number one being Poltergeist. Because it's basically about like what happens when we die, where do we go when we die, and what happens if we're not satisfied when we die, or what happens if we die and we're not fulfilled and we come back angry. So it's like that, and even like Zelda Rubinstein, the psychic, talks to the mom of like, this may upset you, as a Christian, but I need you to be with me. And so it kind of vaguely touches on that. Another one that's maybe a slight stretch, is Dawn of the Dead. And based on the line, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
That's a little bit of a stretch, because that was only the last minute.
That was very last minute. But Poltergeist, I stand by that.
I can see Poltergeist. Let's see what some of y'all are saying. Ray is saying, LOL, my favorite religious movie is Dogma. Dogma is also a good one. That's also a very good one. Another one that builds a universe of rules and stuff and regulations when it comes to it. When it comes to the question of things. And I thought it was a very smart movie as well.
Alanis Morissette is God.
Yes. Yeah. And can't speak or and stuff like that. That was really well done. One of my faves. That's a very smart movie. Josh, that's a very good one. That's actually, that one creeps me out. But Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves, and I think Charlize Theron plays his wife in it. That was also an intense one, although it focuses more on the devil. But just the idea of being a lawyer and things like that, the question of persuasion and stuff, that's also one. Toddy Fan is saying Atlas Shrugged, okay? And also Forrest Gump.
For real, though. No, Toddy's onto something about Forrest Gump. Neon
is saying, I want to see religious horror outside of Christmas. I know, I agree with you that too. I actually recently did, and I'll link it for you all, The Old Ways, which is currently playing on Netflix and also coming out on DVD, which deals with the exorcism, the question of the exorcism, but decentralizes Catholicism and brings in indigenous Mexican culture. And it basically deals with faith and stuff, but not from a Eurocentric religious point of view. And it's, I too want more of that. There's another one I'm doing a review of soon called The Medium. That is, I believe it's already out. I think it came out this week on Shudder, which also deals with religion and faith from the viewpoint of outside of Catholicism. So I definitely agree with you. Tad is saying even Dunn has the Orange Catholic Bible. Okay.
Yeah.
Will is saying the Exorcist TV series are actually pretty good. They low key was hitting close to home on what goes on in the Catholic Church. Okay. Time Fan, Live and Let Die, Haitian Voodoo, pretty racist movie though. Okay.
Oh.
Let's see. Yes, Constantine is good. And the reason why he couldn't get into heaven for having knowledge and not faith, amazing. True questions. Constantine couldn't get into heaven because his deeds could not be selfless. Blake is saying Legion 2010 doesn't get enough love. Okay. Gemma is saying Black Coat's Daughter. Okay. And Blake is saying Little Nicky.
I was about to say Little Nicky.
Aren't horror movies, but they are guilty pleasures. Yeah, that is one of your favorite. That you made his night, Blake, because Little Nicky is one of Michael's fave movies.
It's my favorite Adam Sandler movie, and I was going to say, can I please take back my second one and put in Little Nicky? Okay. And also Saved. I went to a Baptist school during the same time that Saved came out. Touched everything. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so great about the subgenre of religion and horror movies, because, or just movies in general, but more so horror because it can take it to a higher level. Is that a lot of time it touches it because to me horror is so good at being a reflection of the real world in its own way with symbolism.
Yeah.
And if a horror movie doesn't have something to say, then it probably isn't a very good horror movie, if you ask me. Even if what it's saying is silly or minimal, if it doesn't have anything to kind of add to the conversation, it's done an injustice to the horror genre, if you ask me. So I think when you take on the religious aspect, so many have done it, and that's why it's so, such a good thing. And especially movies that take on the subgenre of horror. Okay, y'all. So now we also said we were going to rank Mike Flanagan's projects, or more so give our top 3. And I was saying it was going to be, and yes, the Conjuring series is also a good one on faith too, when it comes to faith, more so.
Yeah.
And Ray is saying saved is so real.
Right.
So Mike Flanagan, top 3, Michael. And is Midnight Mass in your top 3 of his movies? And let me know in the chat and also on the replay, y'all, if Midnight Mass is your top 1. But I want to know your top 3 Mike Flanagan ones.
Top 3 Mike Flanagans would probably be Midnight Mass is number 1. Number 2 would be Dr. Sleep. And number 3 would be which is the one where the sheriff in this one plays
Haunting of Bly Manor.
Haunting of Bly Manor.
Okay.
That'd be number 3.
Will is saying his number 1 is Dr. Sleep. Okay. Toddy is saying Midnight Mass is my favorite of Mike's.
Yep.
Mike's Flanagan's. All right, y'all. So my number 3, I'm going to start at the bottom. My number 3 is Midnight Mass. Maybe even my number 4, to be honest, because I actually thought Hush was really, really good.
What? No, I'm holding up.
But my number 3 is Midnight Mass. My number 2 is Dr. Sleep. And my number 1 is Haunting of Hill House. I still think Haunting of Hill House is I've watched that series so many times because there's just always something new to discover with it in terms of the characters. And although it was something that dealt with an intimate theme and took it on a universal thing, the whole question of family, the question of ties with people, the question of love, the question of duty and things, of who are you as a person. And I just thought I just think it's beautiful. And it's actually really scary at times, but because of the whole idea of death and, how we as humans relate to that, right? I mean, that's something I've always had to grapple with, with a large family, losing people and things like that, and what that means to your life when it's a presence there. So to me, Haunting of Hill House is definitely, for me, my favorite one. I didn't like Bly Manor as much as I did. I liked it enough, but it definitely wasn't even top 5 for me in terms of his stuff. It was okay. But yeah, Midnight Mass is not my 1 or 2, mainly because of what I was saying earlier, which is that Midnight Mass to me could have had a stronger, tighter script. I love the dialogue, but everyone gave a monologue every other scene. And that's
what is there to do?
I know,
on an island that tiny.
Everyone only has time to give speeches, but at the same time, you're kind of like, man, this is a lot, And so, maybe if it was a little longer, because I believe Haunting of Hill House was about 10 episodes. Maybe he could have dealt with having 3 more episodes to kind of give certain characters a little bit more fleshing out, a little bit more time to round it out. Gerald's Game is also a good one.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, Gerald's Game is also a solid one. It's probably my number 4 or 5. Gerald's Game is intense. And this is how you know Mike Flanagan is no stranger to Stephen King. He's probably one of the best Stephen King adaptators that I've seen. Dr. Sleep was so wonderful. I mean, he finally did. I mean, if you've seen any of my live stream, I did a deep dive on The Shining and how I thought Kubrick actually botched the source material. I believe you and I were debating on that, Michael. I believe Michael was the one I was debating with. So you can check that out to know why I think Mike Flanagan did such a better job in tackling it.
Dr. Sleep's great.
Let's see what some of y'all are saying. Toddy Fan is saying Midnight Mass #1, Haunting of Hill House #2. Ray is saying Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, Ouija. Okay.
I gotta check that one out, Ouija.
Will is saying Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, Oculus. Let's see. What's some yes, Bly Manor took a long time to get going. It really did. Blake is saying, no, Chauncey, who even are you? Joking. I didn't know. I know. I told y'all it was going to be controversial what I was going to say. Let's see. Hush is good. Yes. Toddy saying Kubrick is above source material. I don't know about that, Toddy. No.
In his mind, Kubrick was above
maybe.
source material. Yeah.
But yeah, if I don't see it in live chat, let me know in the replay, the main comment section, y'all. But those are my top 3 in terms of it. Yeah, I mean, overall, this was a really powerful show, and I'm sure if I watch it a second time, which I should, I'll probably discover even other things, like I did with Haunting of Hill House. Discover new things, and knowing that Bev gets her just desserts, I'll probably not be having my blood pressure as high when she's on screen, pissing me off. So there's that. Yeah. Do you want to any other final things you want to say on this, Michael, before we round it out?
I just love the fact that Midnight Mass didn't make me cry the same way that Bly Manor and Haunting of Hill House did. I don't know if it was because it was a pandemic and, there was just death everywhere. But then it was just like these people playing like, I love you, but I'm a ghost. But I want to go past the mailbox and you're a ghost. And it was just like, please, I'm crying. No.
Yeah, you cried after we watched Haunting Hill House and Bly Manor. You cried so
I know, right? Now I'll be man enough to say it. And I love Midnight Mass because it made me reflect on a religious environment that I grew up in. And it was very true. And the fact that it was his passion project, it was great.
Yeah. Neon Moon is saying I cried.
Right?
It was a tearful one for sure.
That's why you got the haunted house at Universal Studios. Like, you don't want to pay that much money to cry like walking through a maze. You want to be scared.
Yeah.
But I get it. Good for him. He's got a maze.
Ray is asking if we will cosplay as Starfire and Nightwing. No, not this year. We actually already picked out our costumes. We're not telling anyone yet, though, what our costumes yet, because I don't want anyone to steal the idea. It's too early. But no Starfire and Nightwing this year. But yeah, that would be a cool costume. But yeah, y'all, if you haven't given this video a like yet, please do so. It's always appreciated. And if you have even top 10 Mike Flanagan stuff, let me know in the comment section. What those are, because he's created so many great stories, either from a director perspective, from a writing perspective. And even though, like I said, this was my number 3, it wasn't my number 1 or 2, it is high up there. And I just love, if nothing else, to me, one of the great showing of a really good piece of work, especially a film or a TV series, is the kind of conversations it can get going between people when it can spark something. And I think this is a show that did that. And hopefully it continues to do that, especially in asking the questions that we were talking about here tonight of dogma, of blind faith, of violence, and things used in that. And so, I love it for that reason, for sure. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Michael, for being with me on air tonight. It had been a while since we had done one of these. And we'll probably look at something else to do soon enough. Actually, I do know what we'll probably do next, which is Halloween Kills, y'all.
Yeah!
I am going to do a spoiler discussion of Halloween Kills. It's coming out in theaters, but it's also coming out for Peacock for those of you like me who might not want to go into a public theater again just yet. So we will be doing probably a spoiler. I know for sure I'll be doing, but Michael should be in there too, since we'll probably watch it together. A spoiler discussion of Halloween Kills if you are going to be watching that. So let's talk about it, because y'all already know. Go to my dissection of the Halloween Kills trailer. You'll already know the kind of thoughts I'm going into about this franchise and the direction it's going. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies, because I have some critiques when it comes to this show, when it comes to the way they're doing Michael Myers and stuff. So let's talk about it. No, I did not see Bingo Hell, Fred. I don't know, where's that coming out at? Yeah, Josh, watching on yes, Will, there are Candyman vids coming, but because the whole thing with what's going on in the world, I wasn't able to go to the theater to see it, and I didn't get an advanced screener, so I'm kind of waiting for it to come out on streaming first, and then I can watch. I actually haven't seen it yet. I have not seen Candyman yet. I do want to watch it, and I do want to do a spoiler discussion with you all, but I have to wait till it comes out. So once it does, I'll be watching it, and we'll have a spoiler discusussion. And I have seen Malignant. I actually do want to talk about Malignant too. There's a lot of ones I could do some spoiler discussion on. Actually, y'all, I'll probably do a post in the community section and asking you all which movies you want me to do deep dives into, like we did for this, so we can talk about it. Which recent movies. Yeah, we're definitely doing Candyman. Okay, y'all. Thank you all for joining us. This was such a rich discussion, and I truly appreciated it. And thank you all. Thank you, Michael. And stay safe out there. Don't take blood from vampires that call themselves angels. No. Okay. Keep your faith in yourself. Night, y'all.
Good night.